Wat konorado sa wagwepong. Nyaw sita sa wat si sa watahong sa tat kisa wani sera. Ahando at wadak sa wa dito hunson si dito warado na dito istang hota dito warado na sunggoy tizo. Dito warado oni na gatsan stasara sa oyera. Dito warado oni na gwe gut the wander na gaya dito istang hota. Ne oh nagatsun gwe sun Tano agwego de dawana na gaya te islam hutsa tano agwego de dawana na garukya kana kwati. Nakatitsa kwas na yujats tano waganya to kanya kahaga na kaya do tatano gana sadaga agana kere. So I just wanted to say welcome to everybody to this Defending Indigenous Sovereignty through Divestment webinar. Before we began, I wanted to greet Mother Earth, greet all the natural life cycles, the waters, the creator, and all our relatives that are here on this beautiful little blue planet. They're from the sun, and all our relations up in the sky world. I'm going to be your moderator and facilitator here tonight. We have some great speakers lined up for you. And we're going to be talking about a wide variety of issues, but mostly about sovereignty, Indigenous sovereignty through divestment. And for Indigenous people, land is the most important thing because without land, we are not a peoples, we are not a nation, singing the songs of the earth, respecting all our relations, and thinking about the 7 generations ahead. So tonight we have with us a few speakers, Vanessa Gray, who is the campaign coordinator of Indigenous Climate Action. She's from Amjinan First Nations, and she is Bear Clan. She has worked on the issue of the contamination of the water up in Grassy Narrows, and she is a youth leader. We also have with us Chief Namux. Chief Namux is a hereditary chief of the Tsayu Beaver clan, one of the 5 clans of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. The traditional name he carries is 1,000 years old. As a matrilineal society, his grandmother carried the same name and wore the very same regalia. The duties of hereditary chiefs are to protect the entirety of the 22,000 square kilometers of Wet'suwet'en territories they are responsible for, and to protect them for the generations yet to come. The authorities and jurisdiction of the hereditary chiefs has not changed since contact, both pre and post contact. So we welcome Chief Namux. We also have Eve Saint, and I'm going to let her introduce herself after Vanessa speaks. So I hope you will enjoy this session. There's no question and answer period, but we do have an email at the end of this presentation for you to send some questions in later on. So I'm going to start off with Vanessa. So take it away, Vanessa.
Ani Buju, Vanessa Gray, Indigenous, Janang Donjaba, Anishna Merindao, Makwan Dodam. Hi, I'm Vanessa Gray. I'm from the Janang First Nation. I'm Anishinaabe, and I'm from the Bear Clan. So I am the divestment campaign coordinator here at Indigenous Climate Action. And I just wanted to give a big thanks, Chimigwech, to Ellen Gabrielle, Chief Namux, and Eve Saint, and our comms team here at ICA for helping me pull this together. This has been something I've been planning for a very long time, and carefully bringing together a bunch of really important information I feel you need to have today and moving forward together. So I wanted to start off on a Indigenous resilience and the continued connection to the land, which is a little bit more on our continued survival and the connection to each other that we continue forward. So we not only share the understanding of racial discrimination, police violence, and the displacement from our lands, but we also share a deep connection with our community, with our medicine, and the generations of respect we have for the land and water. And now I'm going to get into the petro-state reality. So my community, Aamjiwnaang, is surrounded by what's known as Chemical Valley, which is a bunch of petro facilities that often works with like the product that oil turns into. So that's like the purpose of like the pipelines and like all the tankers and stuff. Like they take that product to refineries, and they just happen to be all surrounding my community. These are multinational companies. Some of these companies are just as old as Canada, and they function 24/7 and often spill and release into the environment and impacting the health of not only my community, but the communities in the area and impacting further on into the Great Lakes. So along with the petrochemical industries, obviously what comes from that is chemicals themselves, and what my community is faced with is the lack of understanding in how we are impacted by these chemicals. So the next part of my talk is called Banking on Our Own Demise, which I've heard Slato mention before, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight for health reasons, but we wish her the best and hope for her to feel better very soon. But it's basically like putting all of our financial, everything we have for our financials into a future that doesn't really even exist. To divest means to stop investing in something or to intentionally block investment in an activity, project, or geographical area. Divestment is usually a socially motivated activity. Popular examples of divestment used for social justice goals are divestment from South African companies in protest of racial apartheid, divestment from Israeli companies in protest of the country's occupation of Palestine, and the modern movement to divest from fossil fuel companies. Indigenous rights and climate justice movements have been organizing towards divestment from fossil fuels for decades. To divest from something usually means to sell off or get rid of financial investment in something, and fossil fuel divestment involves ending financial relationships with fossil fuel companies. This can mean selling off shares, canceling, or refusing loans, or refusing to insure fossil fuel projects. This strategy is not only about protecting Indigenous rights, but it is motivated by the idea that these rights come with responsibilities, and responsibilities to protect the land upon which diverse Indigenous traditions are built. Indigenous people on Turtle Island have been using divestment strategies to protect their lands, blocking financial investment in tar sands extraction, pipelines, Arctic drilling, and beyond. Using an Indigenous rights-based framework to both defend Indigenous rights and lands and disrupt the flow of capital to the fossil fuel industry, Indigenous organizers have waged successful divestment campaigns for almost 2 decades. As a result of these campaigns, numerous North American and international banks have divested from fossil fuel projects, particular fossil fuel types being coal and tar sands, and some have ended all financial investment in fossil fuel industry. Indigenous people have always engaged internationally. We as Indigenous people face the reality that our struggles within colonial states don't receive the attention or protection that our human rights need. Fighting for our fundamental human rights and freedoms in the international realm is a necessity outside the settler regime. This Indigenous rights-based fossil fuel divestment strategy is different from mainstream climate movement divestment strategies. Instead of focusing heavily on carbon emissions and climate impacts, this Indigenous strategy uses the power of Indigenous rights as they are described by colonial law and Indigenous responsibilities to protect the land as instructed by Indigenous legal orders, to push corporations to divest from the fossil fuel industry. It presents Indigenous sovereignty, title, and opposition as financial risk that banks and insurers can understand and write down in their balance sheets. It can recognize Indigenous rights and title for what they are. They are powerful tools for transforming the economy from extraction to regeneration, from life-threatening to life-affirming. Indigenous fossil fuel divestment strategies attempt to bring the risks and impacts that are usually externalized in financial accounting onto the balance sheet. Fossil fuel companies have purposely excluded environmental and social impacts of their operations from their financial risk calculations, assuming that communities on the front lines of fossil fuel extraction and global climate chaos will quietly bear those costs. Indigenous-led divestment movements seek to have the health, social, and environmental impacts included in financial risk in accounting for the fossil fuel industry, and move financial institutions to engage in genuine processes of free, prior, and informed consent as described by UNDRIP. Indigenous organizers have taken a rights-based approach to fossil fuel divestment. centering existing Indigenous legal systems and rights, and leveraging the unique legal instruments, recognizing Indigenous rights in colonial law to push financial institutions towards divestment. This strategy asks financial institutions to not only stop investing in fossil fuels, but to transform their relationship to Indigenous peoples and lands. A central demand of Indigenous divestment strategies is for financial institutions to honor Indigenous rights, to give or withhold free, prior, and informed consent, FPIC, for activities on their lands. An Indigenous rights divestment framework seeks to divest not only from fossil fuel corporations and the financial institutions that fund them, but to assert Indigenous rights and sovereignty and Indigenous economies as a necessary alternative to the dominant capitalist colonial society. In the context of fossil fuel extraction, it is difficult to imagine our communities truly being in a position to consider giving our consent freely. Because of ongoing colonization and the capitalist economy, our communities are consistently experiencing force, coercion, intimidation, manipulation, and pressure from corporations and governments. So just to go into that a little bit deeper, force, as an Indigenous communities that resist fossil fuel extraction, like the Wet'suwet'en Nation and those resisting the Trans Mountain Pipeline, are met with heavy police surveillance, regular physical assault, and raids on land defense efforts and unlawful arrests, coercion. Companies regularly fund community activities and try to create impact benefit agreements, or IBAs, with Indigenous communities regarding extraction projects. General sponsorship of community activities creates a reputational cover for extractive companies, and it comes with the implicit threat that the funding will dry up if a community speaks up against that company's extractive activities. IBAs regularly come with stipulations preventing chief and council and community members from speaking out against an activity or sharing information about the IBA publicly. Intimidation. Land defenders from the Wet'suwet'en Nation report ongoing harassment by police, which is seen as intimidation, intimidation tactic to encourage land defenders to give up. In intervening in financial institutions, investors' meetings, land defenders like Judy Wilson report being intimidated and harassed by investors. Manipulation. Fossil fuel companies regularly manipulate public opinion about Indigenous land defenders, leading local division among the settler and Indigenous communities. Land defenders from across Turtle Island complain that the fossil fuel companies regularly make deals with some of the band councils or Indigenous-owned corporations and incorrectly lift these agreements up as evidence of consent, pressure. These tactics all add up to situations where land defenders and Indigenous nations are consistently pressured to give in to the wishes of the colonial governments and the extractive industry. So to end off on my points of divestment, we are specifically coming together around companies like RBC who do play a role of accountability when it comes to the ongoing violence and the removal of Indigenous peoples from their lands. Before I leave Eve and Chief Namox to speak, I just wanted to inform anyone who's listening today that the Royal Bank of Canada recently moved their annual general meeting from Toronto to Saskatoon. And so the hereditary chiefs will be meeting with RBC there, but now we are in a place where we have to support the chiefs in Saskatoon. So we will be seeing you there, and we will be there at the meeting as well. So I will leave it here. If Eve, Chief Namox wants to say anything, or you can just go into your presentation.
Howdy, I am Chief Namox. I am of the Taiyu clan, one of the 5 clans of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. I think before I talk, I should clarify that we have 22,000 square kilometers of unceded, non-treaty, undefeated lands. You know, in December 11th, 1997, the Supreme Court ruled that we do have authority and jurisdiction on land. It's never been removed. So the province of British Columbia and Canada itself, they only have assumed and presumed authority. And as Vanessa said, these projects, such as coastal gas links, there was no free, prior, and informed consent. You know, there was not one tenet of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People that was actually followed. You know, when we talk about defunding projects such as coastal gas links by Royal Bank of Canada, you know, that's how you actually get action. That's how you actually make a difference. You have to let the world know that these banking institutions and other financial institutions have the goal of utter destruction. No human rights are being honored, no Indigenous rights. You know, Canada being held up on this high stage of being a free country and you have the right to speak up. We know that is untrue. Our truth is that we live under surveillance 24 hours a day. We live with the threat of violence 24 hours a day. In 2019, 2020, 2021, they came in with their militarized forces on us. There was absolutely no way in a democratic country such as so-called Canada that should happen for an extractive resource that is going overseas to the Asian markets. You know, when RBC funds projects such as these, they're funding the violence too. They're funding the very rights that we have to be on our lands, to be free, to have that enjoyment of place, and to have our homes safe. When they come through your doors with axes and power saws, with snipers on the other side, with attack dogs, that is not freedom. That is no way that they can say that they have any form of consent when you're staring down the barrel of a gun. This is our daily life every day. When Canada states that they are doing in the best interest of Canada, where are the interests of the human beings? Where are the interests of the Indigenous people? We are hereditary chiefs. As stated, the name I carry is thousands of years old. My grandmother carried it, and she was alive when the first contact happened. So our contact with the Western world has only been around 150 years. And look what they're doing. You know, it often makes me wonder why people can stand back and allow this to happen. And they don't realize you're next. Vanessa showed Chemical Valley and our Save Our Sovereignty tour. We went through there. I've never seen anything like that. And believe me, you don't want anything like that anywhere else on this planet. This coming week, we have the opportunity to meet with the United Nations Rapporteur in Vancouver. And this is what we'll be expressing to them. We want the world to know what the truth is about so-called Canada. They cannot continue to hide behind this here untruthfulness of a free, open, country when it's actually being run by an industry which is steering the elected officials. You know, when they're in there every day, killing our waters, killing our lands, restricting our freedoms, we're always under a threat of arrest. They've arrested us numerous times. Our people and our supporters have all been arrested at one point or the other in court. You know, they say that they have an injunction. So they have these areas, these injunction zones where they say we're not allowed to go. Well, we are allowed to go there. We are allowed to go anywhere we want on our lands. But it is the very militarized forces that were created in 2017, the KIRG, and that was simply to support industry to fight against anybody who does not agree with any of the projects that they have in this country. That is the only reason why that militarized force was created. You know, when they have their narrative out there and they criminalize us and they call us extremists and terrorists, we're not. We're simply defending our homes, our lands, our clean water. We're doing our part to fight climate change. And yet these projects here are adding to the world's disasters when it comes to different weather patterns throughout this entire planet. When they come in with the forces that they do and think that they use it to scare us, to intimidate us, it doesn't work, because we know we're right and we know we're telling the truth. What is needed is more people to do exactly that. Tell the truth. Don't let them hide behind their rhetoric. Don't let them take over the narrative of slandering you, of actually labeling you to make the world think that you're a criminal for standing up for what is right and proper. You know, throughout the world, we have allies. Last year, we tried to go into the Royal Bank of Canada when they had their AGM in Toronto, and they canceled it the night that the hereditary chiefs arrived. We landed in Toronto. We got the message. It was canceled. We still continued with what our plans were. And I have to say that meeting probably wouldn't have happened if we did not have allies. We did a meeting with Dave McKay, CEO of RBC, and that would have only happened if Mark Ruffalo, Meryl Streep, the likes of those didn't put pressure on the Royal Bank of Canada to have a meeting with the hereditary chiefs. So those allies are so important, and they believe in the same thing that all of us believe in, a future for our children. You know, when RBC canceled the meeting when they're in there, the headline that really got to me while we're in there in Toronto was RBC runs from hereditary chiefs. I think the headline should have said RBC denies truth. RBC runs from the public. RBC does not believe in climate change. That's what the headline should have been. We do what we do for everybody because we are the land and the land is us. We don't own that land. That land owns us. It is our duty to protect it, protect the clean water, protect the access that we have to our plants, medicines, animals, protect our salmon. We're doing this for everybody. And what we ask is you to stand up, use your voice, be united. Don't be afraid of them. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. Use your voice. Let them know you're there. Be a hero, be a human. Thank you. Messiah.
Messiah Chief Namox, thank you. Everyone, I'm Eve Saint. I apologize. The day got away from me and I was supposed to hand in my bio to Vanessa and Ellen, but I have two small little ones and a full day of Zoom calls. I completely forgot, so I'll do an intro. I'll do my own intro. Hi, everybody. I'm Eve Saint. I'm a Wet'suwet'en land defender. I was one of the 4 Indigenous land defenders that was arrested February 7th, 2020 on Gidimt'en, Cassia territory at Gidimt'en checkpoint, which if a lot of you remember, that sparked the Shutdown Canada movement. And I am based in Toronto. I am part of the Gidimt'en checkpoint divestment team, and I'm a mother of 2 small babies. I'm Moose Clan, and I'm Wet'suwet'en, Mishkegawuk. So that's northern I'm Cree, and that's my mom's reserves at Wabasket. That's Northern Ontario. And I'm Anishinaabe and Mohawk. Okay, so I just wanted to start by stating that I was recruited into this divestment work back in July 2021 by Slato. And as Vanessa was saying, that industry runs 24/7. And also I would like to acknowledge how much our leadership, how much they do and all the work that they endure and continue their dedication and their endurance, and they're human. So I just like to give like a big heartfelt Chimigwich, Nawa, Masai to Slato, to Freda, to Vanessa, to Kanahus, just all these Indigenous women, also Chief Namox and the hereditary chiefs that are out there doing this hard work. We are human, you know, we have health issues, so we need everyone. We need everyone. As Chief Namox was saying, unity, we need to stand together. As we've seen with Shutdown Canada, we've seen how powerful we are when we come together and we use our voice, we use our body. And this is how we got Canada to come, Canada's so-called leaders to come and sit down at the table with Wet'suwet'en hereditary leadership. And before that, they would ignore us. They wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't acknowledge us. They, yeah, but you know, we got there. And so I just wanted to like touch base on some of the tactics that we used in this divestment work. And so when Slato recruited me, I knew nothing. I was actually very intimidated by the work. I didn't know anything. I thought like, you know, I had to know all this financial jargon. I had to know like pastry. I had to know like, you know, just what big banks knew investing in. I don't know. Anyway, I just had this big idea, but it was like far from it. I figured looking back now that I was actually, before I got brought on to the divestment team, that I was already doing the work by organizing, by being on the front lines, by, you know, costing them like millions and billions of dollars, getting the word out to the public that CGL is violating Wet'suwet'en rights. And so the first tactic that we used, okay, so first of all, I work under a mentor, and we have a senior divestment campaigner from Stand Earth. So we work, and I mentor under, well, there's a team now, Chief Namox, and we also have a Slato, but Slato's taking time. And we have a Wet'suwet'en youth, Shaylee. So we come together, and at the time, actually, it was just me, Slato, and Shaylee at the time. And so one of our tactics is contact investors. Who are the investors? Who is responsible for the destruction of the territory? And so we had to learn about all the investors. We had to learn about public investors, and that would be like the big banks, the big 5 banks, they call it, RBC, TD, CIBC, Scotiabank, BMO, yeah, the big 5. And then you have private investors like AIMCO and KKR. And these investors, AIMCO, I don't know if some of you have heard that AIMCO is like, they deal a lot with pensions. So the pensions of the RCMP is connected to AIMCO. So, and there's a lot of like connections. So it's interesting once you start getting into like who these investors are, and we put pressure on. So we made an investment letter stating, hey, this project, we are writing to you in regards of the coastal gasline pipeline project and letting you know that it's violating Wet'suwet'en law, it's violating Indigenous rights, and so on and so forth. And we got a very poor response. We got a poor response where like RBC didn't even like sign, or they wrote us an email and they didn't even they said that they respected Indigenous rights and they have a good relationship. And what else? They were like, okay. The way the response was, I don't know if anybody knows the Spider-Man meme where they're like pointing at each other. There's like 3 Spider-Mans pointing at each other. This is what the email like reminded me of. They were like pointing like, oh, we're not responsible. You like contact your government or contact this office or, and they didn't even like a human being like Dave McKay or Mackay, whatever his last name is, or Kathleen, the CEO or the chair of the board, didn't even sign the letter. Like no human being signed the letter. It was just RBC. So it seemed like it was a big slap in the face. But guess what? We responded back. We responded a letter in response to their letter saying, okay, you know what? This is, again, we gave you guys a chance to come to the table with hereditary leadership to discuss your project. Guess what? We're shutting you down. You have 8 hours to evacuate Wet'suwet'en territories. Bye. Get contact us if you want a meeting. So, I guess they didn't really respond. They didn't respond to that, but obviously, that was a tactic we used. Also, working with these different organizations like Greenpeace and Stand Earth, they actually really, have like a lot of like knowledge and resources, and they really like they're like, what do you want? They look for Indigenous leadership. So encouraging all the Indigenous people out there that are facing extraction projects, we are stronger together. Please contact us. We're here. We want to hear from you because we want to stand together. We're doing this work, and I kind of like got lost my train of thought. But anyway, okay, no. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I just got into it. But standing together and uniting. Oh, okay. I wanted to get back to the campaigns. Okay, so when we didn't hear from them, and back in 2021, when Coyote Camp started, Slato and Hereditary Leadership, they were doing everything that they could to protect the Wet'suwet'en River. And what another tactic was very helpful was campaigns against the bank. So you would, if you're paying attention or like, which hopefully a lot of you are, you'll see a campaign against RBC. So back then there was a day of action, October 29th, RBC is killing me. And it was like a nationwide, like do an action in your town, in your city. And so we asked the banking network, like this network of NGOs that we work with, if we can focus it on what's going on in Wet'suwet'en territories. And so, yes, and it was perfect because it was actually drawing attention to Slato and the Wet'suwet'en land defenders shutting down and reclaiming their lands. And so you'll see that from time to time. And reaching out to encouraging Indigenous leadership out there. So hopefully you can, this is where I lost my train of thought, reaching out to Indigenous folks who want to protect their lands. So we really want to encourage and hear from you, because we want to work together, reach out to Vanessa, reach out to Chief Na'moks, reach out to myself, because we want to stand together. If you know, we have future events, like we have like Vanessa was saying, we have an event. We're going to be at RBC's AGM in Saskatoon. They ran from us because we're putting on the pressure. And so we'd like to hear from other Indigenous communities out there, and like to come and stand with us and join us. And this work isn't, it is a lot of work, but also if, like, you know, you get the right networks and people, like, it's doable. Like I said, these NGOs are looking for Indigenous leadership, and you know, reach out to us and we can help you point in that direction. Like Chief Na'moks was saying, media, using our own media, using our own voice was very powerful in these campaigns, and also divestment and frontline work. It's very important because media will misconstrue the narrative. And also campaigning against, like, RCMP and CERG, and also the government, because we all know that the government and the banks and industry, they all go hand in hand, right? They're all, like, you know, jumping from one job into, like, you know, an MP is, you know, head of like a financial CEO of like CIBC or something, right? They all, like, the RBC, I heard in a report recently that RBC likes to look at itself as a driving force of an entity that runs Canada. So this is how highly they think of themselves, is that they're like one of the functions that make Canada run. So we actually have to hold these entities responsible. Like we have to stand up against the banks. I know you might hear me say we have to, but we have to hold them responsible. They're not holding themselves responsible. They have our lives in their hands. So we have to keep up these tactics. We have to keep up the pressure. We have to reclaim our lands, because this path that we're going down, it's a very scary one. It is. It's very worrisome. So I just will probably leave it there, because I could go on. I just wanted to just share a little bit of the tactics, but there are lots. I was looking back, there was lots of a lot of work that I've done since I started, and giving myself a pat on the back. I was like, oh my God, wow, we did that much. So earlier Ellen was asking about solutions, and it's like, okay, well, we kind of started this work for myself, and I'm like, you know, just keep on going. I think with Shut Down Canada, I think, like, you know, looking at a win for me is like seeing everyone stand up and use their voice and use their power, like that is a big win for me. Or like just empowering people to do this work is a win. So keep on doing this work, and join us if you're Indigenous and want to know more about divestment or your communities. Reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. We would love to work with you, and we need more Indigenous representation in divestment. So thank you, Masai, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you, Eve, for that passionate presentation, and congratulations on your work. I think you've come a long way, and it's we still have a long way to go. And Chief Na'moks, for your dignified leadership in regards to this really challenging time for your people. So what we're going to do next is we're going to show a video Vanessa's going to show a video from Slato, and you'll hear Slato speak about what this topic of discussion is about.
I was not permitted to ask my question. My question was about police violence, about how RBC is funding the violence against Indigenous women, using sniper rifles, using attack dogs, lethal overwatch, helicopters, assault rifles, to come in and remove me as an Indigenous woman from my territory, imprison me, criminalize me, and so many others over 3 years of 3 militarized raids on our territory. To this day, today, RCMP are coming into the Gidimden checkpoint village site from 3 to 8 times daily, threatening arrest, harassing. Yesterday, they threatened a Gidimden elder in her own home with arrest for obstruction of justice on sovereign Wet'suwet'en land. That is what we wanted to tell RBC. That is what we were going to look them in the face and ask them, are you willing to see Wet'suwet'en people killed to push through this pipeline? Killed by the RCMP during 3 militarized raids. One too many of us have looked down the barrel of a gun to push this project through our territories that we did not provide free, prior, and informed consent for any of this work to be happening. We are infuriated. We are devastated at the tragedies that are happening on our territory. And yet we are still here and we will never go away. This will never end. RBC will never make $1 off of this pipeline. We will do whatever it takes to secure the future for all our generations, and to secure the future for thousands of years more for the salmon that spawn in Wet'suwet'en, for our ability to drink the water out of Wet'suwet'en. Awitsa Masai.
As you can see from the videos there and the passion that Slato has, all we ask is that you stand together. All we ask is that you be united. All we ask is be present. You can all make a difference if we do it together. Don't let the labels that they put on us affect you in your right to speak up. Use that voice, be together, and know doing the right thing is never wrong. And knowing that you're doing this for the entire planet, because if this continual funding of these projects happens anywhere in the world, it affects all of us. So it's all of us that must act. It is all of us that must talk, and it is all of us that must be together. Messiah.
Hi, my name is Slato. I'm one of the supporting hereditary chiefs of the Cassia Gidimden clan of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. We want all the investors of the Coastal GasLink pipeline project to know that this is a bad investment. We want everybody to know that the Wet'suwet'en are standing up against the climate chaos that's happening in the world right now. This project has run over budget because they have not gained the consent of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs. We want everybody to know that we've been here for thousands of years, that we will continue to protect our lands, continue to protect our clean drinking water, continue to protect our salmon for future generations. The Wet'suwet'en have a strong governance system that predates Canada, that predates so-called British Columbia. If you choose to invest your money in a project that is committing genocide on Indigenous people and land, you will lose. This project will not be beneficial. You will not have a favorable financial outcome. You have to stop and cut your losses while you can. Awitsa.
I think in the last hour, we've covered a lot of ground. And it's really plain to see that in the last 500 years plus, the colonizer has not changed its tactics against Indigenous people, because they still want our land for their own benefit. And we are, in my opinion, they treat us as disposable people. If you, Vanessa, if you could put on the last slide for people to be able to get in touch if they have more questions. But one thing we know is that for Indigenous people, we've never separated our human rights from the rights of the environment. We have different Indigenous laws, we have different languages, cultures, songs, ceremonies. But the one thing that we all have in common is that care and respect for the land, knowing that future generations must also have the opportunity to be able to use the land, to drink the water, to hear those songs that our ancestors sang long before Europeans arrived here. You know, before the pandemic, in fact, like a month or two before the pandemic, there was actions to shut down Canada. And in my community in Ganasadaga, we had done a small little blockade. The community had blocked the road in support of the Wet'suwet'en who were being attacked by this paramilitary arm of the RCMP. Someone put in a question about politicians saying, we don't tell the RCMP how to do their jobs. Yes, you do, because it is your laws that you are protecting. It is your laws that are violating our safety, our right to safety, our right to freedom. I think that we should shut down Canada again. I think we should be thinking about this and talk about not just the divestment strategies, but how are we going to allow those generations who are children right now that opportunity to enjoy the lands as we have done, like Chief Namaks and my generation have had, and Vanessa and Eve's. It is an important campaign to support. There is an email down there if you want to send some more questions, please do so. We are not criminals. We are people who are defending our rights to sovereignty, just as any other nation would do. We are nations. And for us, we don't consider ourselves Canadian. We never gave up that right, and we do not accept imposed citizenship by Canada. So it's really important for people to understand, as Chief Namaks is a traditional chief, there's a difference between the Band Council and traditional governments. And traditional governments think about today and tomorrow, and the colonial structures think about today and providing services for the community, which is very important. So read the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and see how integrated the environment is in Indigenous people's human rights. I want to thank Chief Namaks for being here and being present. And Nyawa, thank you for telling us a very small part of your story. Yoko, Eve, also for your passionate presentation, and stay safe, both of you, and for Vanessa, for the important work that you've done for your community and continue to do for Indigenous Climate Action. So thank you all for being here with us and for listening to the important messages of tonight. Yoko.